Welcome to the Underground, the Steel City Underground, the black and gold standard for Pittsburgh Steelers coverage. Now, here's your host, Joe Kuzma.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Steel City Underground podcast. My name is Joe Kuzma, and joining us today from the other side, from the enemy lines, is Daniel Wilcox, a former NFL player, 8 seasons, many of those with the Baltimore Ravens, and also a host of the Bleav and Ravens podcast on the Bleav Podcast Network, as well as a Super Bowl champion back in 2002. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But first, Daniel, how's it going?
Going great, Joe. Thanks so much for having me on the podcast, man. I'm super excited. Not very often a Ravens get invited to a Steeler event, so I appreciate you, bro.
Yeah, I know. I'm gonna have to bite my tongue maybe a little bit. This is hey, this is completely different. This is like foreign territory now. You know what I mean? I don't think that, still given the circumstances of what's going on, we know Lamar Jackson might be a scratch more than likely for this game. It's gonna be Tyler Hundley. We also know there's a statistic that's floating around out there, and actually I was going to push this out a little bit later, but I might as well just bring it up. It's fresh in my mind. Jamison Hensley, who covers the Baltimore Ravens, says that the Ravens have won 10 of the last games against the Steelers when anyone other than Ben Roethlisberger has started at quarterback, which always seems to be, unfortunately, the case for the Steelers. It's been I think the one there is Charlie Batch going back to 2012.
It's my time, man.
Yeah. So... oh, if you're a part of that, we could probably have some really great stories about that. I remember I talked to Sean Swisham about that game too, and actually a comment from Sean that I might be able to transfer this over to you too. I don't want to throw him under the bus, but he said, no, we truly hated each other. Those games were wars. What's your perspective on the Steelers and Ravens rivalry?
You know, it was a love and hate relationship for me. I mean, a couple of those guys on the Steelers team back when I played from 05 to 09 were some of my ex-teammates. You know, James Farrier I played with in New York with the Jets, and then AKA Potsy.
Yeah.
You know, and then my boy James Harrison, a.k.a. Debo, me and him played together with the Ryan Fire over in Dusseldorf, Germany.
Yeah.
You know, so we both came back. I went to the Ravens. He went to the Steelers, and he was actually with the Ravens, allocated to Germany that year, and came back and signed with Pittsburgh. And Pittsburgh got a heck of a deal by getting him. You know, so it was a reunion. I actually got a Harrison jersey here at my house. You know, so I love James, man. I love Potsy. I think the last time I saw Potsy was down on South Beach. And I was down there with one of my other teammates from the Jets, Chris Hayes, a.k.a. Pito, who's Keyshawn Johnson's best friend from childhood. But it was definitely a hate versus hate, a love versus love type thing. It was definitely a huge respect factor from one team to another. We respected them enough to bring our A game, and they respected us enough to bring their A game. And it was a situation, Joe, where both defenses was top of the league at the time. You know, you're talking about 1, 2, and 3 in the top of the league every single year. We're going to be in that top 5 some kind of way, whether it's Baltimore or Pittsburgh. And there was so many freaking playmakers on the defensive side of the ball on both teams that it was like literally heavyweight fight, like a Mike Tyson, you know, versus, you know, Holyfield or something like that type fight. And we was at the top of our game. They was at the top of their game. The best thing they had going for them at the time was, of course, Big Ben. You know, they had Big Ben on offense. We had Kyle Boulder for most of those fights, so you guys had the upper advantage on that, of course. So when we got Steve McNair, it kind of evened things out a little bit. And then when Joe Flacco came in, that definitely helped a little bit to kind of even the playing field a little bit more. But as far as defense was concerned, you know, it was going to be a low-scoring game every single time. It was going to be a heavyweight fight. I can remember, I think it was 2008 season, my last season in Baltimore. We played you guys 3 times that year, you know, 2 times in the regular season, 1 in Baltimore, 1 in Pittsburgh, and then we played you guys in the AFC Championship game and lost in Pittsburgh. That was my last game playing as a Raven. And I remember that season, somebody was going to get knocked out the first play of the game. I don't care if it was a Raven or I didn't care if it was a Steeler, but that first play of the game, somebody was leaving the field on a stretcher. And that was back when football was football, right? You know, but we would really kick off, and on that opening kickoff, somebody would have to come get off the field on the stretcher. And most of the time you didn't see it. If you was at home watching, they would actually cut it. They say somebody's down. By the time you come back, they've already carted them off on the stretcher. And then they talked about it briefly and it was gone. So you didn't get a chance to see the full effect of the hit. But it was one of those things where we was going to set the tempo that this was going to be a bloodbath and we're going to hit you harder than us. And then Pittsburgh would do the same thing for us. Like last game, they knocked one of our guys out. This game, we're knocking out one of their guys. We're going to set the tempo. We're going to be the hard hitters. We're going to set the tempo for this game. They're not tougher than we are. And it became like a heavyweight fight, man, every single time we played you guys. And it was so much respect on the field amongst players. Ed Reed got an injury that lasted him the next 6 years playing against Pittsburgh. Hines Ward hit him one time on a crackback block, which is now illegal. Crazy,
yeah,
but it's now illegal. But he hurt Ed Reed's neck, and he had to play with that injury for the next 6-7 years of his career. And it was that type of game. The crazy thing, the guy, I can't remember who the player was that we knocked out, but I can tell you he went to the University of Cincinnati. He was Haruki Nakamura's college roommate, and Haruki was the one that actually knocked him out and put him to sleep on the field. Wow. And he actually wasn't supposed to be in that spot. He was running down on kickoff. I think he was at the 5 spot. He was supposed to be at another spot, and it was another guy that was supposed to be in that spot, and for some reason that guy was down, and they activated him, put his roommate in, so he didn't know he was going to hit his roommate until we actually lined up on the field, and oh my God, this is my buddy, and he still put that wood on him. So that's how crazy that match was. You represented it for your city. We played for Charm City, and everybody in Pittsburgh played for the Steel City. It was a pretty awesome game every time.
Yeah, I was trying to see here. Stone was injured during the play. D. Stone. I'm not familiar with the first name, unfortunately.
Right.
I'd have to go and find it, but I've dug up the game book here, and Gary Russell, man, that's going back a minute for some Steelers fans, I believe. Either, I think he was running back, tailback, fullback. Man, I'm drawing a blank there because it wasn't a guy that carried the ball a whole lot.
Right.
It's funny how that works out, and of course, Willie Parker, first play from scrimmage, offense. I mean, going right back, some great memories, man. Some great memories.
I remember I remember Mendenhall getting hurt because Ray Lewis broke his collarbone because he was talking crap all week before the game, and he got in there and Ray Lewis hit him so hard, broke his collarbone. Now I remember Willis McGahee that last game getting knocked out.
Wow, yeah.
I think that was by Ryan Clark, if I remember correctly.
Yes, I think that is the famous Ryan Clark hit. Like when you pull up Ryan Clark, and that dude could hit. And we bring him up a lot, like as far as like a poster child for probably getting even more fines in the present era of the NFL. But you're not saying anything we've never said on this show before about this. This is a war. And I've got some camo colors on. I just so happened somebody gifted me this, and just the irony. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm suiting up for battle here, even on the podcast. But this came up too on even on like Sirius XM NFL radio. Jim Miller used to play with the Steelers and Bears a long time ago, and he's co-hosting with Pat Kerwin. And they said, look past this week. It's tough. Both of these teams are going to limp out of this game, and then the game, the opponents they got to play after that. They're still, these guys are still the walking wounded, and maybe that's a good place to kind of start too, because obviously the big name already let the cat out of the bag. Lamar Jackson might not be available for this one. So not only is this, the rivalry continuing on without Ben Roethlisberger, now you may have it without Lamar Jackson, who, by the way, I believe is only like 1-4, if I remember hearing that correctly, against the Steelers. He had a game where he was a rookie with Joe Flacco, and he got a couple carries and maybe a couple attempts, but he wasn't actually the starter or getting a lion's share of the playing time at that point. Then likewise, over the course of these games, as you mentioned, Kyle Bowler, but the Steelers also had Charlie Batch. They've actually won with Batch. They've lost with Batch. Byron Leftwich, maybe even Dennis Dixon at some point. It's been all over the place. Even Bruce Gradkowski came in for a playoff game back in 2014 when Ben got hit. And there is that respect there. Yeah, because I think it was Terrell Suggs. And, of course, there's that respect there because Terrell Suggs, that final game that Ben Roethlisberger played in the regular season, played in Baltimore last year. And I really wanted to come out to that to see not only that, but I know if I'm going to wear my colors there, I might get a little less flack from the fan base. I know you guys were very injured and kind of on a slide at the end of the season last year. And then with Ben kind of limping his way out, too, I was like, this might be a safe one where I don't get as much smack talk between fan bases, and I'm not going to get like lampooned here, but let's start there with how How big of a change? It's obviously a change. Tyler Huntley is not Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson can do some special things on the field. But tell us, in your opinion, how this may change the dynamic of the game from the Ravens' point of view.
I don't think it'll change too much. I think the player personnel department did a phenomenal job by scouting Tyler Huntley. I think he's an excellent backup for Lamar. You don't have to change your offense very much when he comes in the game. He's the same type of player. Him and Lamar grew up playing against each other in South Florida. They've been knowing each other since they was childhood friends, since they was childhood enemies or childhood frenemies, however you want to put it. And they went up and they both went to college around the same time, played ball, both of them. Lamar got drafted first round. Huntley was an undrafted free agent out of Utah. And when you look at them, man, if you took the 2 and the 8 off the jersey, sometimes it's kind of hard to tell them apart. It's kind of like the Michael Jordan, Kobe Bryant effect, right? If you switch the jerseys, you couldn't tell who was playing sometimes because they play almost identical at times. Huntley's definitely a little bit smaller than Lamar, maybe not as fast on the top end as Lamar, but he's still twitchy and still pretty quick and allow us to do some really great things in the offense. A lot of the exact same things that Lamar do. So I don't think our offense will change too much. Of course, there's a respect factor for Lamar Jackson, and you have to game plan like seriously for Lamar Jackson. When you play the Ravens, you know that Lamar Jackson is a freaking threat. Your main two guys that you got to stop when you play the Ravens is Mark Andrews and Lamar Jackson. So if you stop Lamar Jackson, you're pretty much stopping Mark Andrews. So those are two guys that you have to key on. The good thing about it is that we're finally kind of getting healthy. I hate that we lost Ronnie Stanley, especially going against that JT guy that you guys have. Having our left tackle out may not be the best thing for us right now. But at the same time, Hundley is a guy that will make a JT miss. He's a guy that can extend the play a little bit, make guys look kind of crazy out there sometimes, but nobody does it as dynamic and as magical as Lamar does. But Lamar has a phenomenal way of just embarrassing people, week in and week out, but a Tyler Huntley still allows, big play capabilities. His deep ball, I don't think is as good as Lamar, but he's really accurate on shorter throws and he can get the ball to guys really, really quick and fast. And guys and the team seems to really still like, Tyler Huntley. I would have loved to have a Tyler Huntley when I played in Baltimore. I think he's dynamic enough to really change the game and keep the game consistent for Baltimore.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy you say that too, because like when we think about this too, you go back a little bit and it's like Cordell Stewart was kind of yeah, he would have been imagine him in this era, he was ahead of his time, and a lot of Kenny Pickett's numbers right now are kind of in line with that. We were looking at that. That's credit to one of our guys here, the coach Zach Meckler. Yes, folks, he's still around. He's in the back rooms, as we say. Busy coaching. He's coaching at Rhode Island, so he's been busy during the season. So taking up his time. It's kind of crazy too, because like the actual kind of title of this show that I titled this was are we in for another tight game? These games are always tight when these two teams play each other.
Tight.
And right now, Steelers -2.5, over under is 37 points. And I'm like, in a lot of cases, I might be taking an over on this, but I really can't figure it out. This could be, and we're going to see, he's been activated off of IR, Chris Boswell, and the only guy that even matches up with him around the NFL as being on an equal level of kickers. And there's a lot of good kickers, but I think Chris Boswell's great. And of course, Justin Tucker is like pretty much legendary, and you got to have that respect both ways. But I'm just wondering, like, Tyler Huntley, Kenny Pickett, the Steelers offense hadn't really been able to get a lot of things going. They're looking better since the bye week, but still, 20 points a game is a struggle. And then we look at these two teams where they just stuff the opponent for the run. They can give up the pass, but is Kenny going to be able to pass, and is Tyler going to be able to pass? So what do you think about that? Another low scoring affair?
Well, I don't think anybody can stop the Ravens from throwing the ball because their main target is Mark Andrews. So when you got a tight end that kind of draws a lot of attention like that, you have to figure out a way to double cover him or put somebody on him that can run with him step for step. And that usually has to be a pretty long, tall DB with changing direction that can move and is physical when you play against a tight end. There's not many of those guys out there, at all. So most of them really play for the Ravens, probably, to be honest with you. Marlon Humphreys and Peters, I honestly think are two of the best corners in the NFL. And I still feel like our defense haven't played a good game all season, which is saying a lot because we're very talented on the defensive side of the ball. When you started thinking about, you draft from the first round pick in Hamilton, and you go down and get Marcus Williams, who was injured, for a while. I think he's coming back this week, hopefully. He made some big plays for us early on. We had 2 great safeties back there, big safeties, and then 2 big corners with Peters and Humphreys. And then you look inside, we just went and got Roquan Smith, who's a Georgia boy, who I really can appreciate, being in Baltimore. And then Patrick McQueen, you got 2 inside backers that are phenomenal now. And then your outside guys, you went and got Jason Pierre-Paul off the couch. He was at home chilling, Netflix and chilling at home. Now we got Jason Pierre-Paul, and you look on the other side, Tyus Bowser's back finally off an injury from last year, Achilles injury, and Marcus Houston. Houston was balling this whole season as well. He's having a heck of a year. I think he got like 9.5 sacks already, So, there's some really good things happening. Calais Campbell on the inside, and we got some guys that can really hurt you. So defensively, we should be much better. On paper, we're phenomenal. On paper, we're a Super Bowl defense. We just haven't played like it all year. I don't know when they're going to get this together, but I'm praying to God it's the month of December that this whole thing comes together, and Mike McDonald, our new DC, and these guys kind of all get on the same page, respect each other, and just hold each other down, and it starts to flow a little bit smoother. If they do, it's going to be a long day for Pickett. I think on the other side, we got to definitely do something about JT. He's not the type of guy that you want to just get blocked one-on-one. We need to double team him, triple team him, run the ball away from him as much as possible. And then, also roll your quarterback away from him as much as possible. But every opportunity you get a chance to get Mr. White on the ground, you got to cut him. You got to pancake him. You got to double team him. You got to chip him. You got to do everything you can to disrupt his game and make him have like the worst game that he's ever played. If you don't do that, you're going to have the worst game you've ever played. And I would hate to see Tyler Hundley be, subjected to that type of misery, having to run for his life the entire game. With our left tackle being out, TJ could definitely have a freaking day.
Okay, it's these 2 teams match up extremely well. And I was going to look at the remainder of the, let's see, I think I might have lost it here. Here we go. I hate this because it's always like so tiny on the screen, but there was just a laundry list of injuries. That's December football, right? And it's like who's in, who's crazy. Out. A lot of rest. So guys like Calais Campbell, the first 4 names: Tristan Colon, Devin Duvernay, Justin Houston, all rest. Marcus Peters got rest. Morgan Moses got rest, which is another big name on this list. But obviously you've got Lamar Jackson, who we already covered.
Queen.
Yeah, you've got a couple of linemen here, Ronnie Stanley, and I already mentioned Moses, but Patrick McCarry.
Big lineman for us. McCarry's a big lineman for us.
And Kevin Zeitler, DMP the last 2 days. So we're going to see who's all active here on the Ravens side and who's not, but it's quite a bit. Yeah, Patrick Queen, but also you guys got Roquan Smith, and I'm a big fan of his, and we'll see how that ends up working out beyond this season. But so far, it seems to have already been a huge addition to the Ravens defense. The Steelers will have to pay attention to. On the Steelers side of this injury report, Najee Harris was limited on Thursday. Malik Reed and Chuks Okorafor were back at practice on Thursday as well. You have Larry Ogunjobi, who seems to practice like once a week. He always got something new. This week it's a toe, so that's lingering from last week. TJ with ribs. He was limited also on Wednesday. And then Deontay Johnson has been kind of hampered with a hip. Cam Hayward got his veteran day of rest. So this is but everybody's going to gear up. I'm sure if they could suit up. I know Baltimore is 8-4. I know Baltimore is trying to cling to that top spot in the AFC North. Right. They're looking over their shoulder. The Bengals have the Browns this weekend, another AFC North matchup, and the Browns always have the number of the Bengals as of late as well. Joe Burrow in particular. So
that's tough.
Yeah. So likewise, if the Ravens win this game, the Steelers are probably out of the conversation, not only for the playoffs, but also for the division. And that's most likely the best path for the Steelers is if they could somehow sneak in, because so far our conference record is just not good. The beginning part of the season, losing against all of the AFC East did not do them any favors when it comes to any tiebreaker scenarios. So let's see. Where do I want to jump around to? I had a name, a blast from the past that jumped into my head. Deshaun Jackson, and what kind of impact he might be able to have here, because, yeah, well, otherwise, though, he's going to take the top off, and with Lamar, Lamar's arm, that's probably helpful because you just can't go to Andrews every single play.
Yeah.
Just to give you a little heads up too, DeMonte Casey has been back for the last couple of weeks. So Steelers do have a couple of safeties. They have Minka, they have Terrell Edmonds, and they have Casey. So it'll be interesting to see how they do that because middle of the field, I know everyone's kind of cringing or sitting here or listening to us talk, and it's like, yeah, Mark Andrews, middle of the field against somebody like Robert Spillane and Devin Bush is gonna have a field day. You know what I mean? But we'll see.
I hope so.
Yeah, we'll see. Brian Flores, linebackers coach, always seemed to game plan very well against the Ravens when he was with the Dolphins. We're seeing some zero blitz concepts. I Bleav a lot of that's coming from him, but I know Mike Tomlin and company lifted those concepts last year, and we saw that in that home game. There's also the scenario, too, where I know I'm poking fun at Bush and Spillane and Miles Jack, but you have all three of those guys on the field at the same time, so it's not a real 3-4 just to prevent and stop the run, even though we know J.K. Dobbins, I really feel bad for him. It just seems like he couldn't get going. But you still got Gus Edwards. You still got that run-centric offense. So I'm thinking about some of the different schemes or situations the Steelers could put up against the Ravens. But who else do we got to look for on that Ravens offense as kind of a threat? I mentioned Deshaun Jackson. Could be. I look up and down. It's tough for me, man. I know a lot of AFC North ball, but I'm kind of looking at the Ravens offense. I'm like, who else is the problem child here? Isaiah Likely, maybe?
I'm glad you said that. You know, I'm a tight end, so I'm always shoot tight end from the hip first with tight end. So I like Isaiah Likely. I think he's a dangerous backup type guy for us that could be a starter anywhere in this league. He's a phenomenal pass catching tight end, and he does a really good job of separating and making yak after the catch. You know, he catch the ball and then he'll make one or two guys miss and extend it for at least another 2 or 3 or 5 yards there almost every single catch. I like Isaiah Likely a lot. He's a slippery guy that gives us an opportunity to do great. The good thing about him is he spent the whole preseason playing with Tyler Hundley, you know, so they already got chemistry together. And then on the other side of that, out wide of the receiver, I really like Duvernay. I think Duvernay is a big-time playmaker. You know, I really do. I saw he was on the injury list a little bit as well. Hopefully he'll be ready to play. But he's a special guy. You know, he could run the ball at the backfield. He could do jet sweeps. He could do reverses. He's also a kickoff punt return guy that could really hurt you on special teams. That's how he made a name for himself in this league in the first place, you know, just returning kicks and punts. You know, so he's an explosive guy. You know, you get him in space and he can make 1 or 2 guys miss. And if he break loose, ain't nobody going to get him. He's that fast, you know. And then there's another guy, Kenyon Drake. You know, I think he's had a heck of a season for us so far, and can't figure out for the life of me why they don't give him the ball a little bit more. You know, he's had some games where he had 4 or 5, like 5 or 6 carries for like almost 100 yards or more. He had a couple of big breaks, and he's had runs over 20 yards throughout the season. And I just haven't understood why they haven't tried to give him the ball more. Of course, having Gus back on the field is a big impact for us. Anytime we start getting Dobbins and Gus back on the field, and Justice Hill. Justice Hill is a great pass receiving, you know, running back out of the backfield that can make you miss, make the first guy miss, and can take it the distance too. He has some quickness and some speed. So we got a few guys that we can hurt you with, and I think we're loaded as we always have been in the skill category on offense. You know, we just have to put this stuff together. We got to find a way to put it together and come up with game plans that are very creative that'll help us get through some of this stuff, man. And I really think 2 weeks ago I was saying the Ravens was the best 7-3 team in the NFL, and I really felt like they could have easily been 9-1 at that point. And they I mean, in the fourth quarter alone, we've given up over 540 some yards. And when you think about that, you think about we've lost 4 games, and in those 4 games we've given up 540 yards. And if you think about it, one game is 4 quarters. So if you just take those 4 quarters and you turn them into one game, we gave up 540 yards in one game. That's absolutely ridiculous, more or less in the fourth quarter when you think you're supposed to be closing teams out. You know, that let you know that we've had a lot of leads and we've been playing a lot of prevent defense and we've been giving up a lot of, you know, underneath catches. But that Miami Dolphins game early in the year, we got the top blew off of us in, you know, prevent and cover 2 and cover 4 and quarters. I'm like, what are we doing? Like cover 6, we getting the top blown off us. It doesn't even make any sense, man, especially with the type of safeties and corners we have in the secondary. There's something not right. I don't know what that something is, but I hope we figure it out really, really soon. The Ravens has never been a fourth quarter team that just kind of flop. Usually that's when we make our biggest plays in the fourth quarter to seal out games, to close out games. And I could remember making plays and coming to the sideline and knowing we had the lead in the fourth quarter and the other team got another possession. And then I'm thinking like, oh, Reed about to make a play. Oh, Suggs about to make a play. Okay, Ray about to make a play. And I'm trying to figure out who that's going to be for us right now. And I'm trying to, we got to start closing some of these games out in order to be a great team. I really thought we was a Super Bowl contending team this year. And the Ravens kind of got me scratching my head these last 2 weeks. I thought we had kind of turned the corner a little bit on defense. And then we kind of went backwards these last 2 weeks. I mean, I think last week we won 10-9. It came down to a field goal, and thank God they missed. And we missed the one the week before to lose the game, and then they missed the one this week to lose the game, and they both fell short because it was too long. So it's something in the water. When you're a Super Bowl team, you find ways to win those close games. You have a bunch of close games throughout the season, and you find ways to win those close games. And we just have not done that this year. And I just don't, that makes me think that maybe we're not a Super Bowl contender team. And I don't want to think that we're not, because I think we're absolutely stacked and loaded. I think we got something to prove after getting hurt last year and people kind of forgetting about who the Ravens were. And I thought this year was going to be a year we was going to really come and just punish some people, beat up on some teams and get some get back from last season since we were so beat up. I mean, we had like 30 starters out last year. It was crazy.
Oh yeah. Last year was absolutely brutal, and
yeah,
I never want to speak ill because of injuries, but
right.
You take a look at that, and that definitely the Steelers benefited by sliding in as like the last wild card, because the Ravens, they went from tops in the AFC to just slid. I mean, you can't. There's a saying that goes in Pittsburgh: the standard's the standard. But even you could say that, but it's not. When TJ Watt comes off the field and he's not out there for half a season like he was this year, that's where the highest paid defense in the NFL doesn't look like the highest paid defense in the NFL, with a number of other players cycling in and out during all of that too. So the Steelers are still trying to find their way all the way around offensively, with rookie as Kenny Pickett is, as well as defensively too, and they may have turned a corner there. It's just interesting to see the dynamics here, because the bye week, you've had 3 games since the bye. Steelers have had 4 with their respective bye weeks, and when you're heading into that, there isn't any Steelers fans who would have thought this. They still shouldn't be thinking this game's a gimme. By anybody that's smart and has watched this rivalry over the years knows
it's never a gimme.
Yeah, never a gimme. But you got to feel like in one way you're like, okay, so Lamar Jackson's out, so that might give a little bit better of a chance. And now the way, it was a 13-3 win over the Panthers. It was a 1-point loss at Jacksonville. It was the 1-point win against the Broncos. And they're a whole other story, man. Let me tell you. And exactly like you were saying, like 61-yard field goal or whatever Nathaniel Hackett's cooking up over there. It's just some craziness, and I don't want to come down to that. Even with if Boswell does play, and coming down to him coming off of an injury, he had a groin injury. How comfortable do you feel with him with some of the kicking? Hopefully he's 100%. Matthew Wright, he's been playing in a dome, and he's still dinking stuff off of the uprights, so he's been getting lucky there too as a backup kicker. So I'm like, please don't come down to the special teams aspect of this, please. But I do expect fairly
down to it.
Fairly tight game between both squads. If it's not, it's got to be field goals. There might be a touchdown one way or the other, especially if they get the proper field position. It becomes a field position battle. But I can't confidently say we're going to see anything better than 10-9. Maybe a little bit. Maybe it's 12-9 or something like that. I feel it's going to be a pretty close game there. So let me see. I was trying to think too. You take a look at the opposite side of this. You're talking about, Baltimore's defense and the fourth quarters. Steelers have not been a second half team, particularly offensively. I think when they've got their game script on and they've been game planning pretty decent since the bye, but making the adjustments and also holding off the opponents, we might be the cure for what you're looking for there. This might be a fourth quarter where there's like no points scored, a very boring
at all.
Very boring second half. So, how much of a threat do you feel Kenny Pickett is, looking at it from the other side here?
I don't really worry about rookie quarterbacks when you play against the Baltimore Ravens. We have a way of frustrating rookie quarterbacks. And I think if you look at like Harbaugh's record versus rookie quarterbacks, he's like maybe I think he's maybe 19 times. He's won maybe 17 out of the 19 or something like that. But he's usually pretty prolific against rookie quarterbacks, so although I think Pickett is a heck of a quarterback and he's going to do well and he's going to play well for you guys, with the type of defense that we have and the schemes that we have defensively with the 3-4, and we kind of shift things along, and we have 10 guys standing at the line of scrimmage before the ball snaps, and everybody kind of bails, and they overload one side and blitz 4 guys off one edge. It's hard to kind of pick up that sometimes. It's really, really confusing. I know from a tight end standpoint, I had to block it for 5 years in practice every single day. So anytime we went team period, you say big on big. I was always a smaller guy, so I would try to pick up a bigger guy sometimes, and you find yourself seeing a smaller guy run right past you, and you're like, God dang, boy, I should have picked him up. And, it's such a frustrating job to have as a tight end or offensive lineman or even a running back, trying to know which side to slide to sometimes when the Ravens defensive front start playing games with you. And it will confuse a rookie quarterback if he don't know better. So hopefully he has a good QB coach, and his QB coach will really coach him up on his checks, and he's a sharp kid, and he's able to check off to the things he need to check off in the split second, because he don't have very long to figure this thing out, and he better know where his check down is all game. Smart quarterbacks know where that running back is almost every single time. Hey, man, it's coming to you. Be ready, But he could have a long game too, man, against our defensive front and our linebackers, So if he's not careful, it could be a long day for Pickett, So yeah. I think anybody can hurt you in this league, because I think everybody here is a pro. Everybody's NFL. You're an NFL quarterback for a reason. You're not a scrub if you're an NFL quarterback. That means you was prolific for some college football team if you made it here. So at some point, that mental ability that you had in college kicks in on this level. And I don't know if it's time for Pickett yet, but if it is, I hope it ain't this week.
Yeah, well, we'll see what Kenny ends up doing. It's exactly what I was thinking. I'm like, what kind of frustrations might he have? Justin Houston, Jason Pierre-Paul, Calais Campbell. I mean, there's a lot of dudes. A lot of dudes.
Yeah, Tyus Bowser, freaking Owe is back.
Yes. Great pickup there. I hate the way you guys draft. I absolutely hate it. We had just too much respect for that draft, because we're looking at a lot of the same players. These franchises are they're just too similar in too many different ways. I think that's where a lot of the dislike comes between them. And you hear a lot. I'm sure you don't hear the anti-Mike Tomlin sentiments over in Baltimore, but you probably have people who gripe about John Harbaugh. I know people are definitely all over Greg Roman. And the way he might call games, and we get that with Matt Canada, and it's just they're just built all the same ways, a lot of ways. They might make some like real kind of frugal type free agent signings sometimes, never a big splash, and then it's built through the draft, and like Kyle Hamilton, for example, and Linderbaum, and I'm just like, man, come on, don't need to set these guys up for another 10 years. Like, get out of the way. Because part of the criticism for Tomlin, like, really is like, hey, how come he didn't win with all these guys? And I always got to point out, he didn't always have like the killer B guys in the playoffs, like Bell or Bryan or anything like that. Antonio Brown gets knocked out the one year, but at the same time with this, it's like you got to contend with the Baltimore Ravens. They're winning division titles, and the Bengals were with Marvin Lewis in between there. They weren't winning playoff games, but they're winning division titles. And the Patriots just coast for 20 years. They just win every division title, against Butt Fumble and whoever else ends up over there in the AFC East. Yeah,
Deflate Gate, all type of stuff they got going on. And then you got
Boston, all that. You guys. Any stories like that by any chance? Like you go to New England and anything crazy, like were people pulling fire alarms or anything like in your hotel, or is that just like specifically like a Steelers thing, or does that happen to every opponent?
No, we never. I don't remember having any problems in Boston at all. I remember them coming to Baltimore, and I felt like the referees came with them or something. I think we played them in Baltimore one time, and it might have been the year they was undefeated. And we broke an NFL record for the most penalties in the game. And that's the game that Bart Scott got his nickname, Mad Backer, the Mad Backer, from that particular game. We played our asses off against them that year. That was my first game back off my foot injury. I think I scored the game-winning touchdown to put us up to beat them. And then Tom Brady came back down and did what he does, of course, and makes you look stupid. With like a minute and 20 seconds left on the clock, he drives down and scores a touchdown to cap the top off my touchdown. And I remember that game, they called like the breaking straw for Bart was they called like a pass interference. I want to say it was on either Fabian Washington or Corey Ivy. And they threw like a penalty. It was like a phantom penalty and gave them a freaking pass interference that put them in a situation where they was able to go down and score. and Bart Scott picked the flag up in the end zone and threw it up into the stands. And that's when he got the nickname the Mad Backer. You know, I don't know if you can like YouTube that, but Google Bart Scott throwing flag in the stands. But he picked the flag up from the referee and threw it in the stands. And I think they ejected Bart from the game or something stupid like that.
Yeah.
But that gave him another penalty that put him even closer to the goal line. They gave him pretty much the game winner. And it was like, man, it was such a crazy, crazy game. I think we had 27 penalties in the game. It was an NFL record. There's never been 27 penalties before. We broke the record. And that's the type of stuff that happens when you play the New England Patriots.
Yeah, you know what? I'm glad you said that, because sometimes it sounds like I'm just whining about them, and they just had the Hunter Henry, very much so not a catch touchdown thing that happened with Jesse James mysteriously years ago, where the Steelers, if they would have they should have beaten New England in Pittsburgh. Yeah. And that play would have been the one right there. If it would have stood, they would have been the number 1 seed in the AFC. They wouldn't have played like Bortles in Jacksonville and had that collapse, because that team had our number that year. Right. So, it's pretty wild. So I'm glad to hear those same kind of things. One other, like, just real
horrendous.
Yeah, just one other one for you here. We were talking about this a little bit off air before we started today, and you were with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers back in 2002, and somebody else was that you might be able to give a little bit of a personal perspective about Steelers head coach Mike Tomlin.
Yeah, MT. Yeah, man, Mike was my linebackers coach in Tampa. And, when I got to Tampa, I just left New York. I was on the practice squad in New York my second season, and I came in the year, like, week 10. And Rich Bisaccia, I think he's with the Raiders still. He was the special teams coach, and he recruited me in high school, going to Clemson and stuff like that. And he remembered me and saw me on the Ravens roster, came and got me, brought me down to play special teams for the Bucs. Mike T was my linebackers coach, and he was just such a phenomenal guy, man. And he's a real class act, and he's a true pro. And he was a players coach then. He had a swag about him and the way he carried himself, and and it was you could see that maybe he would be a head coach one day in the future. I didn't know he was going to be the Pittsburgh Steelers head coach at the time. But you definitely saw that he had potential to be one of the greats. And, we had that team just had a different sauce about it. You with your Warren Sapps on defense, your Rondé Barbers, your Brian Kellys, your Simeon Rices, your Greg Spires, your Derek Brooks, Shelton Quarles, who now I think is almost a GM down in Tampa. It was such a phenomenal defense, man. And it was a really explosive, saucy, full of speed, Tampa 2 type defense down there. And Mike Tomlin was a huge part of that success that they had. He got a chance to coach Derek Brooks, Shelton Quarles, Nate Webster, Al Singleton, those guys. And they was probably one of the most dynamic linebacker core I had ever seen together until I got to Baltimore. So when you talking about great linebacker cores, that Tampa Bay defense was definitely one of the best I've ever seen. I think Derek Brooks had a pick 6 in the Super Bowl. Might have had 2 picks in the Super Bowl, but one of them was definitely a pick 6. And it was such a phenomenal feat to kind of see how those guys played. And a lot of your swag comes from your coach. A lot of the way you play, your confidence, your energy, your character comes from your coach. And he was a guy that kind of instilled that confidence in those guys. And then when he got the head job in Pittsburgh, I was in Baltimore, and I just thought that was such an awesome thing when Cowher retired. And, Tomlin was able to get the head job, man. I was super happy for him. And I think the last time I seen Mike, I was down at actually it was at the NFL Combine. It was at the NFL Combine when you guys drafted Claypool that year. I was doing an internship with the Ravens in the player personnel department, and I went to the NFL Combine for the first time in my life, and I got a chance to evaluate players. I went down to the Reese's Senior Bowl. I saw Mike down at the Senior Bowl that year on the sideline. Then I saw him again at the Combine, and when I saw him at the Combine, when I saw him in at the Reese's Senior Bowl, he still remembered me like I was one of his players. I'm playing on offense. Now I'm a tight end that really didn't fit into Tampa's scheme. They had a West Coast offense, and Gruden didn't know what position I really was. If I was a tight end, a wide receiver, or a running back. He had no idea what would move me, so he just kept moving me from room to room to room to room. And then I was a special teams guy, and Mike, took a liking to me then. And, when you see a guy, you ain't seen him in 6-7 years or so, however long it be, and then he sees you, and he said, Wilcox, what's up, man? And he comes over, give you a hug and shake your hand, man. It's just, it makes you feel like the work that you put in was worth it sometimes, you know. And he's a class act, man. I think you guys got a heck of a head coach. I hope he stays there for a long time, and I hope he continues to break barriers in this league. I hate the fact that he's having a bad year, but it just goes to show you just how important a quarterback is to a franchise, right? And, you know, losing a guy like Ben Roethlisberger, you don't realize how many games he kept you in and how much confidence he gives your offense and your defense to go out and play games. You know, if you don't have a quarterback, you almost know you got to be freaking perfect, 100% perfect, no mistakes to win a game. But when you got a phenomenal quarterback, you can play so loose, you don't care if you make a mistake, and you can play fast 100 miles per hour. Even if you're reckless sometimes, you know, that quarterback will make you right even when you're wrong.
Yeah, and I was gonna say, you know, Tampa, that Tampa team you were on, largely known for defense. It was funny because I was looking through some of the names too, like John Lynch,
yes, sir.
You know, part of that too, and it's crazy how that kind of spider webs around the league and all the different connections. And I picked out Corey Ivy's name out of here too. I'm
Absolutely,
like, hey, you guys followed
guy.
each other around. I'm like,
that's my guy.
You said his name, I was like, wow, there's another blast from the past, man. But Brad Johnson and Rob Johnson, quarterback, and Rob got a little bit of time in there when Brad was hurt. I remember I followed that team.
Yeah, we also had Joe Hamilton. We had Joe Hamilton on that squad. And then we had Sean King too. You remember Sean King from Tulane?
Yes. Yeah. Oh yeah.
We had those two guys backing up Brad too.
Sean King, I think, had some time with. I was trying to see where else he was at because he put up a couple decent games. I totally remember. I've been playing now. I graduated college in 2000, so you know I'm a little bit younger.
We the same year, Brad.
Okay.
I came out in 2000 to the league.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's like when I'm watching and I'm looking back on that, I'm like, yeah, I think I had that guy like on my fantasy team, you know what I mean? So, and there you are, you know, you're like, you're doing bigger things when I'm like, you know, playing fantasy football, you're playing real football. Like, darn it, you know what I mean? But
somebody got to be out there, Brad. Why not me? You know?
That's right. Man. So, yeah, but anyways, once again, folks, Daniel Wilcox here with Bleav in Ravens podcast. They've got an episode right up right now over on their website. It's Steeler Week. That's what they call it, Steelers Week. Everybody looking forward to the Steelers. And we were talking about this too. Everybody's been wearing their throwbacks or alternate jerseys the last 3 weeks. The Bengals did it. Why did I just draw a blank on it? The Colts did it and the Falcons did it. And I'm like, I was kind of looking to see if the Steelers were going to throw out like color rush jerseys or something for this week or whatever for this game, just to kind of hype it even more.
Right.
Like, you need even more of a bigger billing for this kind of matchup. So we shall see. Maybe
they probably won't.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think so, only because the following one, we got a Christmas Eve. We got a 50th anniversary of the Immaculate Reception. I think they're bringing out the block numbers to commemorate Franco Harris and everything like that at home against the Raiders.
That's
cool. Raiders, poor Raiders. Just that team can't catch a break, can they?
Yeah,
so,
I watched that game last night, man. Baker Mayfield, come on, dude.
Yeah, I know.
Come on, Baker. Congratulations, Baker.
Yeah, you talk about quarterbacks. That's just so wow. I don't know.
Dude, he ain't been on the team for 2 days and they beat you.
I know. They said 20 snaps in practice is what I heard.
Yeah.
20.
Yeah, that's the John Gruden effect going on in Vegas right now.
Yeah.
You know, they still recovering from John Gruden.
Yeah, unfortunate, right? And the guy was signed 10 years for like $100 million or whatever. I'm like, why not me?
Crazy.
Anyway.
Why not me too, Joe? Sheesh.
Yep. So you said it was cool. Yeah, absolutely. So, affectionately known as just Wilcox, Daniel Wilcox. Go ahead and follow him at Coach Wilson on Twitter as well.
Coach Wilcox.
Yes. I'm sorry. I said Wilson.
Yeah, Coach Wilcox on Twitter. It's okay.
Half awake. Yeah, I know. We're both calling everybody the wrong names today. That happens, man. Sometimes I'm still, my coffee's right here, right close to my right hand. You know, I'm always it got to be caffeinated. So our two percenters are still hanging around listening to this part of it. So we're gonna close it out. It's just 2% of everybody that's left. So if they haven't shut it off, thank you once again for taking time out of your busy schedule, and we'll see how this ends up, man. I mean, whenever I do these shows with somebody else, I'm always thinking about that. It's like second quarter, I'm like, Wonder what he's thinking right about now. You know what? We talked about that. And it's like, oh, that happened. No, this happened, like the other way. So it's always fun. Football, definitely a large community, large family. It's always cool hearing these stories. So thanks for sharing with us.
Thanks for having me on, Joe. I really appreciate it, man. You're doing a great job, man, and keep it up.
I try, man. I try my hardest. I'm just a dude, just another guy out here, loves to talk football with everyone. So once again, thank you to Daniel Wilcox, not Daniel Wilson. And as we usually close out this show, I didn't get to say like, comment, and subscribe. Don't forget to do that. We always we encourage our listeners out there to be safe, be good, and we'll catch you later.
We would like to thank you for listening and remind our listeners to follow us on social media and our website, www.steelcityunderground.com.